Well, hello friends. On September 10th, Venus moved from Libra into Scorpio. For some of you, this may have signaled a no more Mr. Nice Guy moment. Let's chat about Venus in this sign of depth and passion, as well as its upcoming square to Saturn. Since Venus has moved into Scorpio, you may have been called to deepen your awareness of interpersonal dynamics. Venus describes how we connect with others and create rapport, and in Scorpio, we're not as interested in surface level connections. We're interested in a depth experience. We want a connection to feel real, whatever that means for us. Venus has to do with how we love others, and when it's in Scorpio, in our birth chart, we look for others we can trust enough to be vulnerable with. We may go for quality over quantity here, and we're learning how to identify those who are trustworthy, often through the School of Hard Knocks, where betrayals of trust teach us how to navigate the complicated emotional terrain of human relationships. With transiting Venus in Scorpio, this could be a good time to initiate that we need to talk conversation that we might have been putting off. If you've been sensing something uncomfortable brewing under the surface in one of your relationships, the fastest way to get out of story time in your head is to get a conversation going. Ask if your feelings are valid. Ask if the thing you fear is really happening. But before you do, make sure you're ready to hear the truth, whatever that might be. A moment ago I mentioned story time. What I meant by that is the stories we tell about others by way of making assumptions. For example, we assume Sally's mad at us because we think we saw her roll her eyes when we were talking to her and Jane last weekend. And ever since then, Sally hasn't responded to our text right away. Is she really mad? We can't know until we ask her. Story time's dangerous because if we hold on to our assumptions for too long without verifying them, and then we build more stories on top of that, which we're likely to do, before long, we could have a blowout over stories that really just exist in our own head and that have veered so far off the other person's truth that a rift grows between us. With Venus in Scorpio, it's time to tap into the bravery that's required to say, hey, there's something I need to run by you. I've been feeling something and I want to see if I'm on track and if what I'm feeling matches your experience. When you get into these kinds of conversations, keep the focus on you and your feelings. Venus in Scorpio shadow has a habit of pointing the finger at the other person. Resist statements like, you did this to me, and instead go for, when you did this, I felt like this. That subtle shift can change the whole dynamic of the conversation. You give the other person to have space for their own feelings and experience without immediately getting defensive. They may still feel defensive and feelings might come up for them, but then the ball's in their court to share how they felt when you shared your feelings. Over the next few days, Venus moves into a square with Saturn in Aquarius, and that's exact on September 16th. As you seek those deeper connections or tap into a stronger sense of what you're attracted to as well as what you have an aversion to, which also has to do with Venus, you might face a blockage over these few days. Say you're deep in your feelings and you meet a cold wall of indifference or an impartial, authoritarian kind of energetic coming up from another person. Turning up the volume on your own emotional experience in those moments is likely not going to be the recipe for success. Instead, see if you can cool off enough to meet them where they are, and then keep directing the conversation back to your own experience and your own feelings. Communicate that as clearly as possible without accusations. If you find yourself getting a bit too hot, just ask for a break. If their cooler than thou vibe is really pissing you off, step back and ask to revisit the conversation on another day. Now that you've taken that hardest step of broaching the subject, and you've got what's bothering you out in the open, you'll have plenty of time to work on it later. Another Saturn message here is to allow the process the time that it needs. There's no need to rush, especially when the subject is serious or close to your heart, or has to do with expressing a kind of vulnerability that can ultimately lead to a deeper foundation of trust and connection when expressed well and processed together. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's Astro Message. Please take a moment to hit the like button for me so that others who could use this message this week might come across this video. I appreciate your support and your time watching today. We'll be starting a new series of courses at Astrology University next week. You can join us to learn about the 4 angles, the history of astrology, or the always important building blocks of the signs, which are the elements, modes, and polarities. Stop by astrologyuniversity.com/events to learn more. Well, thanks for listening, and until next time, take good care.